Welcome into the SMITEPro League. We're going to call this one the SMITE World Championship waiting room. We've got the quarterfinal set. We're just going to run down the list. We're gonna chill in here, talk for a little while, talk quarterfinal matchups, predictions, things like that for the SMITE World Championship. Have a nice chill cool down after what was a pretty crazy weekend. We've already had a debate on a really important topic before the cameras went live here, and I think we all agree I would win in that scenario.
Okay, why don't you break it down then?
I think I'm the biggest, the strongest.
Break down the scenario.
No, I refuse to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Let's talk a bit, fellas, about... So remember we had the group stages this weekend, and from that group stage, 2 SEC teams qualified, which is wild, by the way. It was what? Sanguine in Season 6 was the last to do it, right? And then before that, I was a little... You know, I was off in dreamland. I was not in the SMITE community, so I don't know before that what had happened. But having 2 in 1 year seems pretty wild to me. So Highland Ravens, Hex Mambo, Titans, and Oni Warriors, the 4 teams that advance, which means if you're just now tuning in or somehow haven't caught up, Valhalla, Valkyrie, Solar Scarabs, those 2 SPL teams did not make it to this event at the hands of the SEC teams I just mentioned. And we just had our Pick'em show, guys. And I think there's a lot of surprises to talk about, notably Hex Mambo not being picked, therefore being seen as the strongest team coming out of this event with 2 SPL teams qualifying. Pretty crazy to me. So let's just start right up top. Camelot Kings versus Highland Ravens. Camelot Kings got called out by Hex Mambo, and there's a chance they could meet in the quarterfinals. So I'm looking too far ahead. We're going at our own pace here. So top left of our bracket, Kings, Ravens, Bolts, Hex Mambo on that side of the bracket. Jade Dragons and Oni Warriors. Atlantis Leviathans versus Tartarus Titans. So World's Finals rematch on our final match of the day on quarterfinals Friday, just 5 or 6 days away from today. So let's just start things off right up top now. We haven't seen them play in a little while, but they won Phase 3 playoffs, the Camelot Kings. They choose the Highland Ravens. General consensus, do the Ravens feel like the right choice for the Camelot Kings?
I mean, if we take what Coach Biggie said into consideration, they wanted to get, in their opinion, the easiest win possible to set their team up for momentum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go on.
I would say that's, on paper, their best chance of doing so, right? The Ravens...
Why'd you qualify it with on paper?
Because the King's on land, man. He's got the crowd. I think he's got to get a sort of boost in that, right?
Yeah. But no, you're saying like the Ravens are on paper the easiest team, right? But like, why on paper? You don't
I'm
think
telling you because you can't qualify
him right now?
You can't qualify how loud the crowd's going to be going, how much they might show up.
Yeah, if Twig can't hear, like maybe.
He might have like some water in his ear. He could have went swimming the day before. You don't know.
Well, this is a Kings team that was dominant all year long. Fell short during a couple of our playoff events. The favorites going into Phase 3 playoffs alongside the Atlantis Leviathans. Are we calling them favorites going into World? I mean, I guess you have to, right? They're first seed.
Yep.
They'll be probably the favorites of all of the matchups. Their quarterfinal seems the most straightforward. So do we all think Kings are favorites going into the SWC?
I'll tell you this for sure. This time last year, I was willing to take Kings against the field for this year.
Kings against the field.
And they had me questioning it at times throughout the regular phase 1, phase 2, but as we started to gear up a little bit more, having heard the opportunity to hear these guys speak about how they think the game should be played, how practice has been going, I've got the Camelot Kings as a clear favorite for myself.
Yeah.
Unless you look at the bracket. The only teams that I could potentially see taking the Kings, legitimately, Mambo, Leviathans, and that might be it. Those are the only concerns. I'm not worried about the Dragons.
I was looking at the Kings side. I think anyone can show up on any given day. Who knows what happens at Worlds?
Yep.
I think the Kings have the easiest path into the finals in this event.
You think so? Well, I guess, yeah, if you're weighing the Ravens.
Yeah, if you're weighing the bottom half of the bracket as well.
I think the bottom 4 teams.
That is close between those 4. Maybe not as close as one might think. Some people think, it's all 4 SPL teams. That should be the tightest knit one. But I think even at the top end, throwing Hex Mambo against Camelot Kings with how good Hex look, with the fact that some teams are thinking
you're assuming the Bolts can't stop them.
I'm thinking that the Bolts are going to have a hard time doing so. I mean, Tartarus Titans didn't get a chance to play up against them, but the Tartarus Titans looked really shaky this past weekend. The Oni Warriors couldn't stop Hex Mambo. Solar Scarabs couldn't stop Hex Mambo. And I'm also going to take into what PBM said during the thing, which was the Dragons had to play Hex Mambo and Oni Warriors in the Summer Masters.
Yeah.
And he said the Hex Mambo were the harder team. And that was substitute in the support role and Johnny on ping.
That was the team that stopped their win streak.
I want to get to
team
Hex Mambo here in a little bit because we'll talk about them during the Olympus Bolts matchup. I guess that's true. I need to get out of my head like SEC, right? Because you see two SEC teams there, and like I've got this mental block that's not an SPL team name, and that's doing a severe injustice to Hex Mambo, I think. I still stand by what I said, depending on how Hex Mambo show up at Worlds. On the other side of the first quarterfinal are the Highland Ravens. I asked Coach Biggie about adapting on land. Do we think that that's an X factor? I think it could be. I think that's a very talented team. Unfortunately for the Ravens, they run face first in the Camelot Kings into the quarterfinals. I wonder if you're banking on like NRG quality performance from adapting. And Vaporish Coast has been flashy.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
That duo lane's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Are we giving the Ravens a fighter's chance here up against the Camelot Kings? That's ultimately the question.
No.
It's a easy answer.
It's not close.
I truthfully think there's not one matchup that the Ravens could make it into semifinals convincingly, but they have been rising to adversity, right? I think they have been showing up when a lot of people doubted them. I'm not ready to stop counting them out yet. I still think they play a good brand of Smite. Like, I'm not saying they're uncontested 8th on this list, but I don't think they can take the Kings. No.
Who's contesting them for 8th?
Honestly, I think the Warriors had a very shaky performance, and yeah, I would say that they're bottom 2 here.
Okay.
I would say Ravens and Warriors are battling for 8th in my head.
Do we think best of 3 plays into this at all? Do we think funkier stuff happens in a best of 3 than in a best of 5? Like, is a world where there's an upset is because, like, the Ravens sneak away a random win in game 1?
I think the format of best of 3 versus best of 5 is a question of play style. If you are a hyper-aggressive team that loves to play through the early, that's got maybe a couple of eclectic picks, the Jade Dragon style guys, best of 3, one of your best formats, I think.
How about the Ravens?
With the Ravens, I mean, how they play, it's pretty concise. It's pretty consistent. Their win conditions are clear. They play through 2 guys in particular. Generally, it's either going to be adapting or Vaporish Coast that are holding up the early game, and then it's a late game transition.
Yeah.
I think that predictability might be a little bit easier to lock down at a best of 3, but would do well in a best of 5 because then they have time to adapt to the meta that's been establishing. They can learn the matchup a little bit more so. That's that style of play. I think that's where they thrive. But as far as jank stuff goes, that really is only best in best of 3s.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I want to echo a little bit of what Mifflin was saying there. This is also not a team, the Highland Ravens, that do the jank stuff. This isn't like, if we're talking like Anansi Weavers made it here, those guys do weird stuff, and they sometimes make it work.
Crazy world, by the
because
way.
That's like the wildest, that's like the wild of the Wild West when it comes down to the SEC teams. Yeah. You never know what those guys are going to do on any given day. With the Highland Ravens, you can kind of predict a lot of what these guys are going to do. I also do have to give credit to the Highland Ravens. They came into this with a substitute in their support role, somebody who has not been on the team for even a full month just yet, somebody who was also not even playing this role up until just recently in this phase as well with Kazik. So props to him for being able to show up with this team, adapt so well alongside this squad, and really be able to mesh into this role. They also were playing with a mid laner on ping, on 100 plus 200 maybe ping this entire tournament. So credit to the Highland Ravens for making it this far in this kind of given environment, given the situation that they were. But I think this also maybe gives a testament to some of the other teams that were maybe not quite up to scruff against a team like this one, not quite used to what the Highland Ravens are able to do in a situation like this.
Yeah.
But since the Kings have had a chance to watch all these Ravens sets, since a lot of teams have had the time to sit back and watch how the Ravens really perform, I think that this one would, if I want to give a numerical prediction,
I want to do that.
A 2-0 for the Camelot Kings,
sure.
but I think that these are going to, I think that there's going to be one pretty quick game and one that's going to drag out to probably at least 40 minutes.
I can see that too. Quick thoughts from you two. 2-0 Kings. We thinking. I'm thinking 2-0 Kings.
I'm thinking 2-0 Kings.
Miff, 2-0 Kings.
I would say, and I'll take this time, a small little stepping stone to apologize to the EU-SEC as a whole.
Yep.
I have completely undervalued their skill level. I will say it is likely a 2-0 to the Kings, but if it were to go 1 to the Ravens, it would have to be game 1.
Yeah, I'm I'm a 2-0 Kings, but like with 10% uncertainty. I think there's a small opportunity for and to be clear, I don't know what is happening with Angry for Worlds as well. It was ping for this weekend. It could be again.
It is likely, I think, to be
right.
pinged.
I think it's
And
still ping for him
I won't
then.
speak to that yet, but that does make a big difference, I think. All right, that's quarterfinal number 1. Let's jump into Olympus Bolts versus Hex Mambo. This is a Bolts team that, one of the more hot and cold squads that we've had all year long. A team that in Season 8 went on one of the longest win streaks we've had in SPL history. Season 9, they've reached some highs. They've beaten some really good teams. Felt like mid-year, though, this was a firmly middle-of-the-table team. I actually think, even though they're the 4th seed, the fact that they qualified out of that Phase 3 playoffs LAN, I'd call it a bit of a run for this Olympus Bolts team. Pure LAN performance dependent. I think we've seen that they can beat better teams. Mm-hmm. At tournament time, though, and we haven't seen a Worlds run from these guys in 2 years, and the roster looked very different for all of these guys back in Season 6 at DreamHack Atlanta. Been online for a couple years. Playoff events, tournament events have not been kind to them. I think there's a lot of LAN dependence on the Bolts and their chances in this first matchup.
I tend to agree with that, and I do have concerns for the Olympus Bolts here. I think the fact that it is a 3-game set favors the Bolts.
Okay.
Glean from that what you will. If this were 5, I don't think there's a world the Bolts make it through Hex Mambo. But because it is 3, I think they can. But my primary concern from the Bolts lies with one player, and it's the player that carries them a lot. It's the guy that they like to play through. What have we said all year? When the Olympus Bolts look good, it's because Lasbra looks good.
Mm-hmm.
But
to be clear, Lasbra always looks good.
Lasbra always looks good.
He's fresh.
In game, though.
Yeah.
In game, sometimes we have hot and cold performances. But when I look at Hex Mambo's jungler, having maybe for the first time ever seeing him off ping, I think Johnny clears.
That dude's scary.
I think Johnny clears, and
terrifying.
I don't think it's particularly close.
All right, so Myth hangs a lot of the Bolt's success on Lasbra, and I think that's fair because Laz has had a really good year, but when the Bolts are off, it's been shaky. Between you, Trelly, and J-Mac, any thoughts on the duo lane here of the Olympus Bolts? They've got Jake, they've got Barracuda. They're gonna match up against a very talented duo lane. Trixtank had a great event. What do we think about the Bolts duo lane specifically?
I think this is going to be one of the toughest dual lane matchups for the Bolts because Trixtank and Echrome looked insane this entire event.
Yeah.
Even in the shaky moments of Hex Mambo, there was still a lot of consistency with the dual lane of Hex Mambo. I think that this is where Jake specifically is really going to have to step up for the squad to really be that front line, that pillar for his team out there alongside with Baskin. He's going to have to make those calls to have Lasbra come over there and probably give a little bit of hand because while Barra wants to be the player that will sit back, passively farmer up the tower, wait till that level 20 hits, and then join the action, Echrome's not going to let him do that. Same thing as players like Vaporish Coast and a lot of these EU hunters. They're not the passive style of player. This is a bloody lane when you look over into the duo lane. And I imagine that Hex Mambo are really going to bring the action to duo.
Yeah, let's pivot to Hex Mambo. We'll talk about this team for a minute as their replays run. What a run for Hex Mambo, first and foremost. I want everyone's initial knee-jerk reactions to what Biggie said when he was picking his opponent. I said, Hex Mambo called you out. How much of that played into your mindset? And he said, not really, don't really care. That was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But then what he finished it with was a nice compliment towards Hex Mambo, saying he believes Hex Mambo could be a top four SPL team if they chose to play in the SPL this year. I want everyone's knee-jerk reactions to that. Do we tend to agree? Maybe their play on field this weekend would have showed that. And clearly the other teams valuing them just the same. None of the teams that picked their quarterfinal matchups wanted Hex Mambo.
I want to highlight a tweet that I saw that immediately resonated with me, and it was, holy crap, I've never seen Johnny on ping. This dude's top 4 jungler. Like, period.
Who tweeted it, though? That's
I don't
important.
remember.
Oh, okay.
And I just read it.
Like,
and
I could have tweeted that and it meant nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't know what I'm talking about.
I read it, and I immediately went, this guy's got a point. Whoever it was,
right.
I was like...
Shouts Naruto fan 2052.
Yeah, I mean...
Awesome Jake's younger.
Yeah, looking
Awesome Joe.
Looking at the junglers, I mean, you got Pantom, Scream, Twig. I think Johnny probably right underneath that. Like he really is that dude. So
because we saw him with the Valks. Was that last year, Johnny?
2 years ago, right?
I'm trying to remember.
No, he was on the Valks last year.
Was
that
last
was the
year?
season 8
But
team.
remember,
Season 8, okay.
online all year long.
Yeah.
And seemed like a ray of light for that team when
At times.
he got a pentakill. One of the only pentakills in season 8 of the SMITEPro League was through Johnny. Miff, give me your reaction to Big E calling Hex Mambo top 4 SPL team should they choose to play.
If you had asked me 3-4 days ago,
Sure.
I think Hex Mambo's not in the equation.
Yeah,
So I'll take this opportunity once more. EU SEC. I didn't know your game. I'd like to apologize. That's on me. I didn't know what was up. I saw the competition over there. I mistaked maybe long, drawn-out games for not well executed, and I was wrong. Having seen Johnny now without ping, I wouldn't want to approach him in the jungle. I think that this is a player that could upseat and embarrass legacy players in the league. It is ridiculous what this guy's been capable of doing.
Would you talk to him at LAN?
Honestly,
I pass him a
I
note.
heard he eats at the chillest restaurants.
Can I even-
he hangs out with the coolest guys.
I even want to talk about maybe the upbringing that Johnny has had throughout his competitive career. I mean, I've been watching this guy from his old SCC and back when it was the SMITE minor league, but way back into the day and the old Challenger Cup and whatnot. When this guy was slamming Bakasura, Kali,
Bakasura,
Alquang,
Kali,
those
that's
were
right.
his 3 gods that he played exclusively.
That was stinky.
And he dumpstered
In
every
a good
single
way, though.
person that
No.
ever stood in his way. It was so bad or I guess in this case it was so good. He was so hard to face it. It came down to a question of, is there even a single team or single player that can match Johnny's pace when he gets those gods? Are you just going to ban every one of those gods to keep Johnny down? That was typically the answer at that point. The evolution that he has had coming from those 3 being like his only picks. So we look at season 8 where Loki kind of became the #1 go-to. That had to be banned away. Now we're talking things like Mercury, the Hunbats, all these different gods that have built up in his god pool and made him such a flexible player in the jungler for his team. I think is what makes him probably one of the scariest junglers in the league because he has become so flexible for his squad.
Final thoughts here before we move on to our next quarterfinal. How confident are we in some of the SPL teams, or should it be Highland Ravens, whoever they may end up meeting, in completely eliminating Johnny from the game? We have talked a lot about Johnny.
Yeah.
Johnny is the win condition for this Hex Mambo team. Do we think there are teams in the SPL capable of eliminating that? And then where do Hex Mambo go from there?
I mean, I'll start with the matchup. Lasbra v. Johnny.
Yep.
Lasbra has this ability. He can absolutely stuff Johnny in the early and the game's done. 2-0 bolts, we move on.
Right.
But if he does not, it's going to be a problem. And I think I honestly favor Mambo in the matchup going into it because of that situation.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. We didn't do predictions for this one. This might be the harder one to predict. I actually don't know. I think 2-1.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God. I'm more nervous now than I was in Game 4 of Hex Mambo.
Are you that much more scared, Dave?
Yes, my stomach was pulsing. That's a bad word, but I'm gonna stick with it. 2-1. Oh God. Bro,
Do you want us to come back to you, bud?
Every time I'm about to say Hex Mambo, I think about bolts, and then I'm about to say bolts. I think it's a 2-1. We're going to come back to me, though, and I'm going to just let you guys sway my decision. Miff, who do you think? Hex Mambo, bolts?
I'll say this at risk of receiving maybe more hate than I ever had before because the Olympus Bolts fans are the loudest.
I know where you're going now.
It's Mambo. It's Mambo because it's not just Johnny, even though it is Johnny.
We haven't talked about Deathwalker yet.
We haven't talked about Deathwalker.
about
I've got
Yukon.
massive faith in his performance. I think that he's able to rotate around, and I haven't seen leads exploited out of the soul lane like I had from Deathwalker in some of those Amaterasu games in a long time. I think that support could be massive. I expect Trickstank to just straight up have a better performance because at times in stakes games, Jake looks nervous. Trickstank doesn't look nervous, and why would he be nervous? He's the underdog in this situation coming from the SEC. As far as the duo lane is concerned, I would say it's a 5-5 matchup between Echrome and Barracuda. Sure. And then out of mid, it's hard to evaluate the mid of Hex Mambo because so often they decide to play without one because he's locking in Chronos every game. But
My man be vibing.
even then, I think if it is going to be lock in Chronos, have everybody else do it, I'll blast towers when we get to that point. It's a strategy that I thought wouldn't work and has only worked so far. So I'm taking Mambo. I'll take them 2-1 because it seems like they have to lose the first game of every set.
They got to
that's the
download
only
their
reason.
opponents, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
At risk of taking too long on this quarterfinal matchup, Trelly, what do you think here? You on Mifflin's train, Mambo?
I'm going to reiterate my point. If Lasbro diffs Johnny in the early, which he can, it's 2-0 Bolts. But if he does it and Johnny runs free, I think 2-1 Mambo.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say 2-0 Mambo.
2-0 Mambo.
I think Mambo are just that good of a team. I've been very shaky on the Bolts for all of Phase 3. Even in the Phase 3 playoffs, they didn't look particularly amazing at that point. Hex Mambo have been doing nothing but getting better throughout this tournament, and now they've got an actual like hot week moving into the next one where the Bolts haven't had any real competitive action outside of scrims recently. I'm taking 2-0 Mambo.
Yeah, I wonder if this is the type of set where after game one you're gonna know you're gonna know exactly how.
We'll get a
it's
pretty
gonna
good
end.
idea.
You know what I mean? Like I know it's a best of 3 and there's not that much back and forth that can happen, but like I could see a world where it's also a 2-0. Here's the good news: I'm a host. I can move us on, and I'm gonna do so before I make my prediction.
Wow.
Coward alert.
Just left it at a 2-1 and
my
leaving
God.
it there, huh?
It's a 2-1.
Uh-huh.
It's a 2-1.
Go with your gut.
My brain
Your shaky
keeps,
little
My
gut.
brain keeps saying Hex Mambo. My brain keeps saying it.
What's the heart say?
My heart says Olympus Bolts. My brain says Hex Mambo.
All right, now we'll figure out what kind of person you are. Which one?
I've led with my heart way too many times in life, and it's gotten me.
It's
nothing
gotten
but
you
shattered and broken. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Our
scary.
third
So
quarterfinal matchup could be interesting. I think this one also very dependent on which of the two options for both of these teams that we get. We've seen the world beater, tournament time Oni Warriors, the individual players in the past. Remember some SSG players on this team, some SKPK players on this team who have gone on runs. Do we get the emotional resurgent Oni Warriors, or do we get the, albeit now the Hex Mambo are a very good team, but losing to Hex Mambo, really pushing things to the limit here, very tense game 4 against the Solar Scarabs, tough Oni Warriors. And then Jade Dragons as well, fellas. I think this will be a fun conversation to start off with for this quarterfinal. Jade Dragons, so your third seed coming into this event. They chose the Oni Warriors. Mike had the option between Oni Warriors and Hex Mambo, said that Oni Warriors were the, quote, easier team to play against than they were in the previous event. How do we describe the Jade Dragons as a team? I kind of think hot and cold, they're very aggressive, but there are days where they are just not on. I have confidence in them. I'll tell you right now, I favor Jade Dragons. I think 2-1 in this matchup. I'm going to get my prediction out early. But I think this is, again, a set where if the Dragons can't play their play style, could get a bit off kilter. I want to start with the Dragons, though, here in this one, and everyone's thoughts on what they're bringing to Worlds.
Something that I haven't considered is the fact that Pagon's never been in a situation where you're playing in front of a crowd.
Real young, too.
He's very young.
That's a good point.
He's a rookie, but
That's a great point.
I've never seen him nervous. You know, like even like day one, he rolls
I
up.
interview him and he gets nervous.
Well, no, he's in so
When you put a mic in front of him.
in social
Not his support,
situations,
like an
for
actual
sure.
microphone, right.
So like, maybe if everyone's like Pagon, he's
And
gonna like choke.
no, they're gonna say "Pay God," and
Okay.
there's gonna be 2,000 people
goat.
chanting it.
And if
Like
that makes him
2,600.
if that makes him miss his abilities, then that could be something. But I think he's very confident, as he should be, one of the best mid laners in the league, and the Oni Warriors have a reason to look shaky, right? They did not come as confidently through group stages as they would probably have hoped. I saw the emotion on Nika's face, and he said he's confident this team can win Worlds. He's had opportunities to leave the squad. A lot of them have, and they've stuck together because of their confidence. I still think Dave's right. 2-1, Jade Dragons is my favorite as well. The only thing you can really hope on is like I said, the rookie choking, or I also think that Panda Cat has had some shaky performances as of recent. I do want to see that hard carry, confident ADC that the Jade Dragons, I know they have. I haven't seen it as of recent.
Miff, what do you think? Jade Dragons. We haven't talked much about Scream against Cuvo Fred. Do you think Cuvo Fred's at risk of getting outpaced by a player like Scream? Do you think that's an avenue, a win condition for the Dragons?
I think that you've really hit the nail on the head. Maybe
Thanks,
it's
man.
my jungle bias, and you've been casting me a very long time, but that is generally where I tend to look when I try and figure out these matchups. Cuvo Fred has looked shaky. Every loss the Oni Warriors have taken at this event that we just finished has been off the back of Cuvo Fred getting outpaced in the jungle. It's not been Nika, it's not been Dardes, it's not been Vote, it hasn't been Neil. It's generally come from Cuvo Fred. And with Scream on the Jade Dragons being one of the fastest junglers in the league, being one of the most impact players in the league, willing to get his hands dirty, playing these hyper-aggressive picks. I think that is a major concern. But this is two teams, the Oni Warriors and the Jade Dragons, that have got wild consistency issues. At times, both looking at the best in the league. At other times, looking like pretty mid-tier teams in the league. So it's very difficult to lock down which way this is going to go. I would say it just comes down to, and it's a cop-out answer, who shows up on the day. Which team do I trust to show up more on the day of? And it's a bit of a hot take. It might just be the Oni Warriors.
Could be the Oni Warriors.
He's in it's a prime position.
We'll move
Neoma
on
6 seed?
We'll move on to the Oni Warriors in just a second, if you can defend them. J-Mac, kind of final thoughts here. Jade Dragons. I think you both have released your predictions now. We'll move on to the Oni Warriors in a second, J-Mac. But any beats we've kind of missed on the Jade Dragons in your mind?
I think the one thing I've noticed from the Jade Dragons through a lot of these playoff matchups, especially ones where it's very high stakes out there, is that they're going to have an explosive game one no matter what. I think Jade Dragons are almost guaranteed to win game one of a set. But then once a team finally finds a way to kind of stem that bleeding out in best of 5 sets, it can go to game 2, sometimes game 3, where the Dragons kind of hit a roadblock. It hits them pretty hard. And then it usually takes that 100% mental reset of them going, guys, we're just fast at this game. We're just good at this game. And then you'll see these games that'll be, a 25-minute game 1 win, a 35 to 40-minute game 2 and 3, and all of a sudden the Dragons just come back in game 4 or game 5 and they win in 20 minutes. Yeah. I think that this one is entirely based off of how fast the Dragons can bounce back after game 1, and I say that even despite the fact of me giving Dragons advantage in game 1. I think this comes down to their mental of the game 2 momentum, being able to hold in and being able to try and find that bounce back if they drop game 2 to then come back in game 3.
Who do you like in the set?
I'm favoring Dragon just a little bit, and I think it's coming down to the pacing issue that Mifflin was talking about with Cuvo, Fred. Even getting a chance to kind of listen to Cuvo and the team as they were walking through. Cuvo was talking through some of the mistakes that he and his team were making, even just throughout this recent set, either a quote-unquote disrespect towards XCC or X person out there. Right. That's not something that you can do against the Jade Dragons. And the Jade Dragons, they disrespect you in a different way. It's not even that they disrespect you. It's just that they don't respect the enemy team half the time. And they will just run at the red buff. They're going to run at your speed buff. And that can sometimes really wear down on the mental of players who do go off the momentum like the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, Jade Dragons, they play their game maybe more fiercely than any other team in the league. Other side of this matchup, the Oni Warriors. We've talked a lot about them this weekend. And so we can kind of hit some of the high points, I think, before moving on to our final quarterfinal. The Oni Warriors, in my mind, the other end of what might be one of the biggest mental matchups, as we've all already talked about here this weekend. The Jade Dragons, a very headstrong team, a team that sometimes needs some time to resettle. Oni Warriors, a team now who have had their mental tested through an SPL qualifier tournament at the beginning of the year, a win and in, lose and out qualifier game at the end of group stages just now. And so this team has been through a lot. They've played in world championships in the past. They have won world championships in the past. And so I trust their mental to end up winning the day when things get tough. Does that win the game on the field? Different story. But I think as far as mental toughness goes, I think the Oni Warriors have got it here. And I think a lot of us have put a lot of weight on Cuvo Fred in this matchup. Cannot get outpaced 2 games in a row by Scream. You got to give your team a chance. But also Cuvo Fred had a gauntlet of junglers to go through this weekend.
It's true.
You think about who they played Storm, if I'm remembering correctly, in the first matchup.
It's been a long week, man. Don't ask me.
They beat the Storm, and Dame was Storm's jungler who plays really good Smite. Mm-hmm. Then they move on to play up against Tex Mambo and Johnny, and we have talked about Johnny ad nauseum. And then they moved on today to play Sanford Soccer, who had an incredible Pele game in that set. So Cuvo's gone through the gauntlet of junglers here this weekend. It's going to have a real tough task up against Scream. Anyone have a few beats on the Oni Warriors, maybe outside of Cuvo Fred, win conditions for this team, specifically in this matchup against the Jade Dragons that could be exploitable?
I think that it's hard to talk about the on-field, right? Because it really is just day of. This is a team that is largely consistent in their strategy. The Oni Warriors are going to play Morrigan compositions. They're going to play double Hunter compositions, and it's generally just those 2 styles. But I will say this. Every time Neoma has made a run through Worlds, it's been through 6 seed. And what's his seed right now? It's 6th. He's the 6th seed SPL team. Whether or not that's going to add up to anything to be determined, but I think for sure, very capable, speaking to the mental that you bring up earlier, of dragging these games to 55, 60, 70 minutes and just saying, hey, how long are you capable of focusing? How long can you keep chasing after this dub? How long are you willing to stand at this fire giant and stare at me? Because Neilma will do it indefinitely. And he brings that confidence and he brings that, I suppose, even lightheartedness at time to his team to be willing to make those style of plays, wait for these mistakes. The Jade Dragons are a team that strike me as a bit impatient at times, could be susceptible to the Neilma just world's run styling.
World's mental, right? Well, they had what you and I just casted what was 2 consecutive 10-minute fire giant standoffs.
That's right.
Where you're talking about one stray ability, one mispositioning makes all the difference in the world. And the Oni Warriors were able to stand up against that. Nika, so much emotion in this team as well, and in a good way. They love playing this game together, and I'm sure there's frustrations with Neilma at times. I can be a troll, and I mean that with all love. But world stage, Cuvo Fred getting a kill. He's going to be standing up and letting people know. You know that Nika, after a big win, is going to be feeling emotional. This is a team that rides with their emotion, and I think that can play into your hand. On the biggest stage that we've had in 2 or 3 years, with what I'm assuming will be one of the most energetic crowds that we've had in a long, long time. So many people so excited for this. Talking about a team and their emotion, I think this is a team that's got a pretty good grasp on it, and that can definitely play into their hands. Any final thoughts here before we move on to quarterfinal number 4?
I mean, I just, I talked a lot about how confident the Jade Dragon should be, but one thing that the Oni Warriors do have is multiple win conditions. We talked about how Cuvo Fred needs to, get off to a good start, not be unshaky, but Nika is always, getting off to a great start in solo lane. Very rarely is he dropping kills. Very rarely is he getting solo, that sort of thing. And Vote and Dardes both have that ability to run away with a game if given the positioning. I think that they just have so many different lanes they can actually play through. The Oni Warriors have reason to be confident. I could see it in Nika's eyes. He feels very confident. Yep. And despite the fact that I still do give the edge 2-1 to the Jade Dragons, as Miff said, whoever shows up on the day can easily take over the momentum. I think you played into the crowd a little bit, and I think Cubo's the kind of guy that would get more hyped up the more the crowd's cheering for him, that sort of thing.
Chairs beware. He's going to be kicking
chairs.
Yeah.
Chairs, we're going to be running. We're going to remove those all from the field. I think the emotions of the team definitely could be a good driving factor to their confidence.
I think one phrase that we use sometimes is this is a battle between 2 titans of teams, 2, monsters of teams. I like to equate the Dragons and the Oni Warriors, the Oni Warriors specifically, to more like a Hydra, where even when you cut one of the heads off of this team, another one pops back up and it's ready to take over in its place out there. I think even if you chop down Cuvo Fred, you've still got Nico over the solo lane, who can definitely be a hard carry for this team.
Good.
We saw it all the way through the qualifiers for SPL at the beginning of the year when the team wasn't looking as hot. Nika comes back and decides, you know what, I'm just going to play these hard carry solo laners, the Bastets, the Cleanas, absolutely dominate then. Nika's having a bad game. Okay, no worries. Let's throw it over to Vote and Neilma on the duo lane, who can definitely be a carry. We saw in the very first set of the week against the Schwalbe Storm where Vote went 20-0 in 2 different games out there.
True.
Those guys might not be having the best of games. Play through Dardes, who has this wild range of God Pool, whether it be the standard Morgan AMC that we're so accustomed to at this point, or he throws out the Hera, which has been such a coveted pick for him, or just about anything out there. I mean, he's playing Hunters mid, Mages mid, Assassins mid. You never know what Dardes is going to throw out, and I think that's what makes this team so dangerous, is because any one of these players, if one of them gets knocked down a peg, the rest of them can step back up.
Can say the same for Pagon, though. He's got a flexible God Pool. This could be one of the more fun mid-lane matchups we've got. I've forgotten everyone's predictions. Miff, what'd you say for this one? No explanation. I don't want to hear an explanation out of anyone.
2-0 Jade Dragons or 2-1 Warriors.
2-1 Dragons.
What'd you say?
2-1 Dragons.
I think I was thinking 2-1 Dragons as well, but also firmly on the depends which of the 2 teams we end up getting. I guess you could say that for any of the. I guess that's our own way of saying I'm not holistically confident in saying 2-1 Dragons. I'm saying it with a bit of shakiness in me because it's very realistic. The Oni Warriors.
And you're scared. We know.
Absolutely, I'm terrified. I reminded everyone.
He's been telling us a lot.
Not a lot scares me,
but how scared he is.
Not a lot scares me, but
could have fooled me.
But really good Smite terrifies me.
That thing right there.
I'm allergic to good Smite. I'm bad at the game. Atlantis Leviathans versus Tartarus Titans. This is our final quarterfinal of the day. That'll be played on Friday afternoon. A World's Finals rematch from Season 8. Now, Atlantis Leviathans, a bit different. Tartarus Titans, a bit different. And so, this could be... I think this is one where you'll favor the Leviathans, of course, because they were your second seed coming out of that Phase 3 playoffs event. And I want to start right here with the Atlantis Leviathans. So a team that sort of middle of the year had a roster, I guess maybe it was later on, like last third of the years when Haddix joined this team. Feels like slotted in very nicely. I think Haddix has been a fantastic addition to this team. Remember, the set against the Camelot Kings was a lot of fun, a back-and-forth type of set. One that they probably feel like they could have won. They still feel like probably... remember, they got the second pick here. They chose the Tartarus Titans out of Titans, Oni Warriors, and Hex Mambo. It was only the Highland Ravens who were off the table. I think the Leviathans one of the most consistent teams in the league. A team that has Zapman at Worlds, I'll remind you. One of the most fierce leaders in the SMITEPro League. And also a team... to J-Mac's point, with many different options as far as win conditions go. I think the Leviathans have the tools in the belt here to make a big run up against the Titans specifically, but maybe even back to finals.
I think it's a fair analysis. I find myself in the camp of firm Leviathans fanboy.
Okay.
It is so difficult for me to say anything bad about this team. The only thing I can think of, and it's my player brain, is I wouldn't want a team with Shinto because he takes all the farm. But that's because...
he plays too much Smite.
Yeah, they play too much Smite, maybe that. But the only thing that I could say about them is maybe Zapman doesn't have the best 1v1s on the planet. Otherwise, I think Rongyu is in contention for best support in the league. I think Panatom is the best jungler in the league. I think Shinto on a hot day will absolutely carry you through everything. It reminds me of Peak Paul at times when he's been dealt that type of hands. Haddix is incredibly consistent, just top to bottom. Love every single bit of this squad. And I do think we mistake consistency for their skill floor. I think that the Leviathans will often show up, especially in the earlier phases.
I think those two things can be the same thing.
And just play
is their skill floor not consistent?
I suppose so. I suppose to a certain extent. But the point I'm trying to make is we very often see the Leviathans playing at their worst. Okay. And they consistently win from that position. Right. And then as the stakes start to build up, as the year starts to go onward, maybe it's Zapman just holding on to strategies all year or holding on to just pace-making plays. But as it goes onward, that skill floor seems to rise. Yep. And they won't play down anymore. And it just keeps going up. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So I've got the Leviathans slated for making it to finals.
Okay. Trelly, Atlantis Leviathans. What do you think quarterfinal matchup here against the Titans?
Yeah. I'm going to echo 90% of what Miff said.
Ooh.
Probably 100% of it. I'm sorry.
You want to be so bad.
I wanted to see what that 10% was.
I just don't want to repeat how good the Leviathans are because we know.
Sure. Well, talk to me about maybe how they match up into the Titans in your mind.
My one concern with the Tartarus Titans, and I think the reason that the Tartarus Titans have been very inconsistent and the reason they're down where they are has been some strange god picks, some strange selections. I like their playthrough Paul play style, right? Like I think everyone did. It ended up working out very well.
And I'm sure we'll talk about Paul.
Oh, we will. But I find SOT's new god pool very questionable. I think when he's on his
100%.
When he's on his like picks that he knows how to pilot, he's fantastic in lane. He can play very dominant. He knows how to hard carry a lane away. But seeing things like the Uller, for example, that was not very strong. He got soloed a couple times. I have been very shaky about SOT's performance. We know how good he can be, but I feel like maybe it's a confidence issue, or maybe it's just trying different strats, trying to facilitate the team in a different way. I need to see more out of SOT to even give them a 1 in that column over the Leviathans.
So through that, you're feeling confidence in Haddix in that lane. If we're looking at
this guy didn't talk about the Levi's at all.
If we're looking at it through the Leviathan's lens, no,
I said totally repeat what Miff said, and then add this,
which I imagine means you're giving some confidence to Haddix in the soul lane. Leviathan-centric thoughts here that we maybe haven't touched on yet in this matchup specifically.
I do want to kind of briefly touch on, now we didn't get very much information out of Wrong You during the draft. You know, he kind of came in and said, I was told to pick this, and that's
Because
what
he
I'm
told me
going
to.
with. But I think
sure he agreed.
I think there's a lot of weight to be had with that, where he comes in, he doesn't have to really explain all that much. He just trusts the confidence and the veteranship of Zapman to know that we can beat this team. And if you look at the history of the Titans versus the Leviathans, pretty much the entirety of this year has gone in favor of the Leviathans. They've been winning those direct matchups. The Leviathans have been looking more and more consistent as the year goes on, where the Titans have been looking less and less consistent. Now you throw in, I can't call him a rookie jungler because it's Sino, obviously, but new for this squad specifically, hasn't been looking like the veteran that we know Sino to be. And I think for me, that brings up the biggest question is that Panatom might be one of the best junglers in the world going up against a person who's trying to get back to the point that he was the best jungler in the world out there, trying to return to form. And because of that, I think that jungle inconsistency with Sino, if you take that Nemesis away from him, you take that Naja away from him, I haven't seen a performance from Sino yet where I'm like, dang, that's a really good Sino game.
That's a good shot right there.
Do you one better?
Clearly,
just take the Naja.
We're clearly ready to move on to the Tartarus Titans here. So let's talk about them on the other side of this matchup. And so we've talked a bit about SOT's God Pool through Trelly. We've talked about some of Sino's God Pool through JMac. I want to know what kind of weight we're putting on World's Paul here, because Paul all year long hasn't been doing the carry thing, and then this past weekend during SWC groups, we saw the carry thing out of Paul a little bit here, and so you know with some other teams we're talking about how they might have issues adapting to the main stage, to the crowd, to things like that. Paul's been there and he's done it. He won Worlds with SK, and that was a miracle run that they went on and found a huge upset in the Worlds finals. Paul has got to be an X factor in this matchup if the team is able to play through him. This Titans team has been shifting around a lot all year long. If they're able to spearhead some of that composition through Paul, I think that's a big X factor in this matchup. Not necessarily going to call an upset, but could make things interesting.
When I've seen Paul look good, I think it was a bit of an experience gap in this most recent event, because a lot of the players that he had played against aren't used to dealing with the Set in mid, aren't used to dealing with the Pele in mid. When we talk about these other SPL squads, they've had plenty of time playing against Paul's God Pool. So do I weigh Paul heavily as far as his mechanical skill? Absolutely. I think Paul is a phenomenal player, that you can count the amount of players that play as well as him potentially on one hand. But I want to talk about the Tartarus Titans holistically. I tend to agree with Trelly in that SOT just refuses to play meta picks. It freaks me out. I couldn't tell you why. I would say that Sino out of the jungle is playing unorthodox selections and hasn't looked the absolute best on them. When he's playing Naja, it's a tier above. It's 3 tiers above his next best pick, which I would say is Nemesis right now. But if you're falling back down to Chalk and everybody else on the planet is playing the Thors, they're playing just global presence, high pressure picks, the Osirises, the Erlongs, or just about anything else, it tends to make me a bit less confident in Sino's ability. I hope that in the 5 days we have until Worlds, he can tack on at least one more god onto that god pool.
Yep.
But my primary concern for the Tartarus Titans are the roster swaps throughout the year. And namely, it's just one in particular. I think ever since the loss of Cyclone Spin, the Tartarus Titans have looked lost. They lost their primary shot caller. Having had the opportunity to play against and with Cyclone Spin at various points in my own personal career, I could tell you for a fact that he dictates the ship. He is the captain of the ship. He tells you where to steer. He tells you which one of your main masts to let down. He's telling you port or starboard, and he's doing it very well. And he gets incredibly angry if you can't execute on it, which might be some of the reasons we don't see him anymore. But as far as Stu is concerned, I don't think he's filled in those shoes just yet.
Stu's been good for the Titans, right?
Stu has been
great. Has not been bad. I think Stu
has been all right.
I think Stu is he's
for where he is in his career.
Sure.
Stu has been great.
Yeah, sure.
But
sure,
you can't top what Cyclone Spin is bringing.
You're comparing to one of the ADC goats,
one of the goats,
which is always hard to do.
I think what Myth's saying is that Stewart is quiet on a team of quiet boys.
That's right.
And Cyclone was not quiet. So
Right.
because
I
of
don't
that,
think you're wrong.
Yeah, Stu looks great doing his own role, but however, the team as a whole, because they don't have that voice, needed that voice. Sino came in, he said, "I can be that voice," and whether
But
that,
I'm going to play Chuck.
but I'm gonna play Chuck.
Yeah,
and I've went on record many times to say I hate the Chuck. I get what he's going for. Again, it's an sometimes unkillable jungle that can get farm and set up for Paul. That's what he's trying to find. But it has not worked in high-pressure matchups, and that's where you're up against the Atlantis Leviathans. It needs to work in high-pressure matchups.
Yeah, you can't be swinging a random. Well, unless it's worked out in the past. I was going to say swinging for the fences on a whim when you're in the world's quarterfinals here, and there's not much room for error in these best-of-3 sets. J-Mac, do you have some final thoughts on the Titans here, or you feel like we covered our bases?
I think kind of echoing a lot of what we talked about with the Titans throughout the season was you don't know what these guys are going to bring the next week of play. When we're going into Spring Masters, all of a sudden double and triple Hunter is a thing, and the Tartars Titans are doing it better than anybody. Then we jump into another phase of play, and now we're seeing Warriors in the Hunter role. We're seeing Hunters over in the solo lane. You know, we don't know exactly what this team is going to do, and I think that that's a slight X factor specifically with Paul that could elevate this team just a little bit. I mean, think back to his run with PK. Nobody was playing Scylla. Everybody thought that Scylla was one of the worst mages in the game at that time. And what does Paul do? He pops off. He makes it look like the best god in the entire game at that point.
Paul's that dude,
all the way
sure.
with doing the Morrigan as well. Paul is a player that will find something that nobody else thinks works and make it work and make it look really good and probably even the most broken thing in the game. But at the same time, I think echoing similar thoughts and maybe similar concerns to Stewart as a player, I think that Stewart looked really, really good when he was with the Scarabs, when he had Scream on the team, a person who could allow him to play more aggressive, someone that could allow Stewart to really fight in that lane a little bit more often. We don't see many rotations from Sino to the dual lane to really give Stewart some of that pressure, to really allow Stewart to feel comfortable in that lane. More often than not, Sino's trying to facilitate Paul or trying to get SOT ahead. And so it's kind of forced Stewart to be a lot quieter than what we were used to at the peak of his Scarab's career. I mean, you think back even to the World Championships when they're going up against the Jade Dragons. Stewart is popping off in that set. Looked like one of the best players on that entire team as a rookie with only 6 months experience in the SPL at that point. I think Stewart can do it, but I think it's going to take a culmination of Sino going over there to give him some help. I think Paul's going to have to do some spicy stuff in mid to really kind of alleviate pressure and allow Sino to go to another portion of the map and not really have to worry about Paul to be that only carry for this team. Because I think that both Stewart and Paul are very capable of being the carries for this squad.
I think they can be. All right, so final predictions on this one. I think we're kind of getting a vibe here in the room, Miff. Are you leaning Leviathans heavily?
If it wasn't a team game and we were just talking about Paul, I'd give the Titans something.
Okay.
But you're only as good as you are as a unit, and the Leviathans are real good.
Yeah, they do be good.
I'll 2-0 them.
2-0.
Yeah, I got to give it 2-0 again. Unless Sino comes up with the craziest mindset switch up that we have ever seen and plays a completely different brand of Smite in the next 5 days. 2-0 Leviathans.
J-Mac?
We need a meta SOT, Sino finding more than just 2 or 3 gods that he's good at, and Paul having a pop-off performance. That's a lot to ask for a Titans team that somewhat struggled to even get through this event, and they have less than a week to figure that out. I think I've got 2-0 going to Leviathans for this one.
I'm feeling split confidence on this one, but it's the same team winning it. I think 75% tells me 2-0 Leviathans. There's a little 25% kind of itch in the back of my brain that's thinking there could be something here. Paul could have vintage moment. Stu could step up. We could see some great stuff.
They could be clowning us. They could be
they
hiding a lot of
should.
strategies.
Absolutely.
I hope they are.
They could be legitimately, I've thought about it a lot, they could be sandbagging us.
I hope for their sake they are.
Yeah, for their sake they might be. And what? Oh, I forgot what the word is. I'm gonna Schadenfreude or whatever.
Yeah, you got it.
Schadenfreude. Is that what that would be if they beat the Leviathans?
I don't know what that means.
Okay. Well, maybe it's. I'm sorry if it's a bad thing. I don't think it. To be fair, I never said the word. I don't think it's a bad word. Right. I think there's a little itch in the back of my head that tells me 2-1 Leviathans. But I'm thinking the Levi's win this one. All right. So we've talked a bit about the quarterfinal matchups. We're not gonna run through a whole new bracket or anything like that. But let's get some predictions out there. And just sort of talk through semifinals and finals the way we might expect to see things go. I doubt we're going to reach full consensus on a lot of this. I think Camelot Kings is who we all said advancing from the first quarterfinal.
Right. Yeah.
I think we're going to have a lot more agreement here than you do.
Right, we might. The rest, look, I'm happy to be voted off the island here. We're thinking Hex Mambo convincing, well, maybe not convincingly, but Hex Mambo in a potential close set, right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so general room thought here is semifinal number 1 would be Kings versus Hex Mambo. Semifinal number 2, I think we felt sort of a loose confidence towards the Jade Dragons, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And then Atlantis Leviathan. So if in our mind things work out the way they do in our mind, it'd be Kings Mambo, Dragons, Leviathans. A couple great semifinals, I think. So let's theory craft for a minute. I don't want to do nearly as deep analysis on those because they're definitely not set in stone. Should the Kings and Hex Mambo meet in the semifinals, as a room, are we thinking Kings over Hex Mambo? I'm not trying to deep dive into this because it's all hypothetical. Should that be the matchup we get? Is it closer in a best of 5? In a best of 5, now the Kings are really good at best of 5s. How close are we thinking? We thinking the Kings have a path to the finals through this one.
It is very difficult to say, considering the only test we have for Mambo against, the bottom of the SPL, the guys that had to fight back in to get into Worlds. I'll have a much better idea of it after we see how they deal with the Olympus Bolts.
Yep.
But as of now, I'm favoring the Kings really heavily.
Yeah, you got to go off what we got here. Like 3-1 heavily?
I would say 3-1 if they're trolling.
If they're trolling. Trelly, similar kind of pacing to what Miff had here. What do you think on very hypothetical?
Right. In a hypothetical sense, I think this matchup is sneaky good for the Mambo. Not saying in favor, but I'm saying Twig has had some shakiness even coming into, they were first seed, right? Even when we talked to him in interviews, he was saying his confidence was in question. Like when he got a solo kill against Panatom, it gave him like this boost and this rush that he was like, wait, I actually am one of the best junglers in the world.
Nice.
He needed that, right?
Sure.
Johnny can play up to that level. So if Johnny diffs Twig from the beginning, that could get Mambo off to a good start. My one issue is I have no clue how Mambo tries to deal with Yarkor and genetics. I don't think
That's
they
scary.
have something
Yeah,
to deal
true.
with
Genetics,
Yarkor
man,
and genetics. When you
genetics
think
can
about
be
that in
good.
your head, it does start to push the matchup very heavily in the Kings' favor because Trix and Echrome are great. Don't get me wrong. Like they play very well together. But Genetics and Yark are playing like the best duo lane in the world.
Yeah.
99% of the time, and I don't know what they have to deal with that.
EMT angry too.
So we're thinking,
Ugh.
we're thinking,
And that's
we're thinking maybe
potentially
Kings here.
angry on Ping, where BMT was still diffing SPL pros on Ping himself. And I'm talking like he's going like toe-to-toe with Pagon and some of the
That's
other
right.
big
BMT
shots
was gone for a little
whenever
while.
he
That's
was
right.
on Ping. This is a scary matchup for Hex Mambo. I think that this one, for my prediction, probably goes 3-1 to the Camelot Kings. I think that the Kings are susceptible to potentially drop a game out in here just for maybe not paying quite the respect to the late game that the Hex Mambo love to drag matches out to.
But they're paying the respect.
But at the same time, I think that the Camelot Kings have shown, and we've talked ad nauseum about it throughout the entirety of this year, is that this is a team that even if the Kings fall behind 3,000-4,000 gold, they're losing everything in the early game, this is an objective-based
bounce
team.
back.
This is a 35, 40-minute, we're going to own you in the late game style of team. They have done it almost better than any other team in the league at almost any given time throughout the year. And if Hex Mambo are willing to drag the Kings to their best point of the game,
Sure.
They
I
let
think it's-
Zeros' Chronos get online
I
if
know,
they
that's
do
right.
that.
that's what it's. I
You
think
got a
I
bunch
think-
of Smite nerds in here, Dave. You got to move us along.
I think
I'm pushing us along.
I think you ban the Chronos away.
Oh,
you got
man.
a much
Try
better
harder
chance
than
at the
that.
late game out there.
Yeah.
But I think
Right.
I'm favoring Camelot Kings,
In
but I'm
this-
giving it 3-1 in this case.
In this very hypothetical semifinal
Yes.
matchup.
Right.
So the room at large, I think, is thinking a Kings run to finals is maybe most likely from this upper bracket. Upsets happen. They happen all
yeah.
the time. And
they will
so
happen.
things could get shaken up. They will happen. The odds of us being correct, pretty low. So we were thinking, again, hypothetical Dragons versus Leviathans. That would be a barn burner of a semifinal between two very good teams. In the past, we've talked about those two as, hyper early game. But the Dragons are a very, very good squad if the game ends up pulling out a little bit later. I think the Leviathans on the flip side, obviously very, very, very good in the team fight stage, late game, but also a team that can catch you off guard a bit earlier on. I think regardless of the way... Oh, man. Yeah, I think regardless of the way all of the quarterfinals work out, the bottom of the bracket here is going to have the closest semifinal, whether it's Dragons or Warriors, whether it's Leviathans or Titans. I think this quarter... I mean, barring a Ravens upset, right, if we're assuming the Kings go through...
And if that's the case, that just means they're better than the Kings.
Which means they're better than the Kings, which does keep it tight, sure. I think a hypothetical Dragons-Leviathans matchup is what I would scratch onto my personal prediction bracket. Did I say Leviathans or Titans? I said Leviathans.
You said
and
Levi's.
I meant Levi's. Oh, God.
Got him second guessing himself.
No. I still think Levi's and I still think Dragons. Now I'm thinking of who from this side of the bracket I would advance to the finals in that event. I think I still got to give my confidence to the Leviathans. They're too rock solid of a team, and they proved that during the Phase 3 playoffs. But I don't know if I'm saying that super confidently. I think in a best of 5, we'd go back and forth in a very hypothetical Dragons versus Leviathans semifinal. So I think I personally have the Leviathans advancing to finals from this side of the group. I think seeding just kind of dictates how some of these matches go. But if it is Dragons versus Levi's in semis, I think that would be a fun matchup.
Still haven't given a set count. 3-2 Levi's.
You think 3-2 Levi's?
That's right.
Yeah, I think this is the only set of these best of 5 that goes the full distance. I don't even think finals is gonna hit that 5. I think that's gonna maybe be a 4-gamer.
Curse my finals.
But I think that this might be the only one that goes 5, and this will be the biggest set I think of the entire semifinals. I think if
Is that usually how it goes?
I think
Don't want to hear it.
We usually almost always get either really good semis and a really bad final, or a really good final but not so great semis.
I got both. Honestly, it depends which sets I'm casting. I'm a notorious 3-0er at these events. We had a 4-gamer.
Can't stand you, bro.
Well, it's unbelievable. I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm going 3-2 Levi's on this one. I think that this is one of the best teams at downloading the opposition as the games are going on.
Sure.
One of the most adaptable teams in the draft. And
That's
I
the
think
Z-Man.
And I think when Zapman is not trying to play the E-sets and the Raigens and whatever other nonsensical stuff he's throwing in the duo lane just because he wants to, I don't know, catch some kind of thrill of fun over in the duo lane that's not a hunter. I think this is one of the most consistently good drafting teams in the entire league. I think that the only other one that competes with them as far as good, consistent drafts is the Camelot Kings. And I think because of that, because of the Leviathans' willingness to go, okay, you won with this in game number 1, you will never see this god ever again as long as we face off against you, where other teams are more willing to let some of those go through. Like, I don't know. I don't think it was that good. Maybe we can just, let it slide. Maybe we have something better against it. Leviathans are a team when they see something that works, they cut it off immediately. They chop off the head and they stuff it up right there, and that's it for Leviathan. So
Sure.
I think this is going to be a 3-2 because of how good the drafting is by Leviathans, but also how good the play on field is by the Dragons to adapt in that regard.
Trelly, you think Levi's move on to the finals from this half of the bracket?
I have learned better than to bet against World Zap. Man,
Yeah, that's true.
I think that
How much money you lost, bud?
No, I've never bet
If you're
literally.
still like 50 grand in the hole.
Keep it
holy
down,
shit.
Peanut Gallery. It's Charlie's turn.
It's 25 grand now.
In my head, I mean, Zapman's just that dude. When it comes to Worlds, he's gonna make it happen.
Jenny from the block.
I am a big.
That's a throwback.
I am a big fan of the Jade Dragons play in regular season against this team, but for some reason, when it comes to these big deals, when it comes to the land environments, I guess they're all land environments, but when it comes to these big tournaments, the
This is a
Leviathans show
different
up.
type of land
Right.
environment.
This is
not just,
something
we're
you don't
showing
gotta
up.
worry about screaming fans.
Yeah, this
in
isn't
the
just
studio.
another
This is
Thursday
scary-
in the
screaming
studio.
Mifflin usually, yeah.
Right.
The Leviathans show up time and time again. So I
wonder. This is
a slight edge.
This is doom and gloom for we're all kind of in consensus on who's moving. There's going to be a crazy.
Oh, this is
upset.
all gonna be wrong.
There's going to be a
somehow.
crazy
Oh, yeah,
upset
we're gonna lose
somewhere
it
in here.
Somehow like the Bolts are gonna drag their way through this entire bracket and just win it all.
That'd be crazy, and I'd be
that'd be
down for
sick.
it.
All right, so I think the time is now. We've moved on quite nicely. We've analyzed the heck out of all of these teams. If you want to give me a little bit on it, please do. Who are you thinking, Miff, Worlds winner? Camelot Kings, Myth, you think you got winning Worlds?
I'm not going to expand on it at all.
No, you're allowed to.
But you know what? Actually, I will. Shout out to EU. That's the Kings. You guys
Oh
are
my
nuts.
God,
Oh,
he's
Let's
full
go
on
Camelot
no.
Kings.
He's gotten called out, and now
Dang,
he's
that's a
just,
triple EU stack side of
Hey,
that
look,
bracket.
look, I like NA,
Mifflin
I like EU,
Mifflin
EU,
apologizes
and NA.
for nothing. Mifflin he never
The
apologizes.
fact that EU has gotten now three in just
apologies,
this show
that
alone
is
and 2
unbelievable.
public tweets too.
I've been given new information,
Yeah,
and
no, that's
I'm
true.
willing to internalize it.
And learning from new information is a very important thing. So, Miff, if you were to fill out a bracket on your own, you would have the Kings beating the Leviathans in grand finals to win Worlds.
Yes.
Okay, Trelly, if you were to fill out your bracket,
Ooh.
If I were to fill out my bracket, I would not show any of you. I would keep it to myself.
is it out of embarrassment? Is
I
it?
just, I don't.
that
I just got bad
I
He's got
don't
him in
have
a
the-
lockbox
you know what,
under
I'm
his
gonna
bed.
All right, take me as a chair one for a second. Take all my analysis out of the question. Okay, this is just what I've been seeing as of
All right,
recent.
Please
listening.
don't hold me to my statements.
I'm listening.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Because this would be crazy.
Let's get chair one Trelly.
No,
out here.
it's fine. We got bold predictions, whatever. I want to hear it because I'm going to ask for everyone's.
You gotta
dark
tell me
horse
you
in
actually
second
think
too.
this. I need to hear what you think. I don't want you goofing on this.
Right. I'm telling you that if the Bolts beat Mambo, then yeah, Camelot Kings take it. If Mambo can beat the Bolts, I could see a world. I could take it. I could
What?
see a world where Mambo makes it the whole way to finals. Not to say they could beat the Leviathans, but I could see them make it the whole way to finals.
I
I'm
don't
with
think,
it. I'm with it.
I don't think
I
that's.
can,
I don't think.
I can get behind that.
I think it's outlandish, but I don't think
yeah,
it's like.
and that's what I like.
Incredibly outlandish.
I'm trying to put that out into the world. 'Cause
I got
want some
Mambo and
chaos.
Bolts easy.
So if you were filling out your bracket, you would put Mambo Leviathans in finals.
And I wouldn't tweet it. I would keep it to myself.
But would you pick Leviathans then over Mambo?
Yes, I would because I think Panatom is that dude. You know, like
Panatom's like
we've
that.
been hyping
What
up
if it
Johnny.
were Kings versus Leviathans? Who would you give it to?
Oh, then Kings, 100%. That's what I'm saying.
Really?
Wow.
If Mambo, if
So
the
are you
Bolts
thinking?
win-
It's just
are
a
you
matchup
thinking-
thing.
yeah, it's a matchup.
Well, hold
thing.
on.
That's
So
what I'm saying.
you're thinking that both semifinals, if it ends up being Kings Mambo,
Yeah.
you think both semifinals might go the distance?
I
Could
would
you see a
hope
world
so, yeah,
where?
100%.
Well, we all hope it because
Yeah.
that'd be insane.
I could see them both.
I
I
honestly
like that
can't tell.
storyline.
Yeah,
I'm
that'd
a
be
Hex.
crazy.
I'm a Hex Mambo believer after what we saw this weekend.
Right.
It's almost like my brain's got to catch up with like an SEC team like dominating some of our SPL squads, like and they could make it to semis,
Yeah.
and I think they've got a really good shot at it. And I still think even then my brain is gonna have to catch up on these guys. They are so good at Smite, and them against the Kings seems, because all year long it's been Hex Mama, the SEC team. Whoa, they beat the Scarabs.
Yeah.
What can they really do? And now we're talking about potential
Big E
semifinals.
evaluated them correctly.
Sure, potential top 4 SPL team, and we know that teams can win games any given day. There is a chance. There's a percentage
It's-
chance where that could happen.
What
I
it
don't think
is
the same.
it's recency bias in my head
Sure.
because I haven't seen like Yarkor just fry someone in like 2 weeks.
It's been
We haven't
it's
seen
been
it.
over
He
a
pieces
month.
them up for
If,
sure.
if he just rolls up to lane, gets a
over a
solo
month.
kill, I'm just gonna rip up my bracket immediately.
J Mac,
Gonna feed it to the dog.
J-Mac,
It's
if
like,
you were going
no.
to fill out your bracket, who would be your finals matchup, and who would you have winning Worlds?
Man, I know I said the Kings earlier. I like the storyline where Shelly's going on Hex Mambo, and I have to go on record and say the year that Splice won was actually a prediction by me that Splice won that year when they were like the
Brag about
underdogs
it.
back then.
Yeah, let us
there was
know.
only 2. So this was when we had like another fantasy league that was going on, not the huge one that's now, but one that was at least of similar scale back then. There were only 2 people out of the 100 brackets that got submitted that had Splice winning. And the only reason I won was because I had a
pull
better
up
like
chat
head-to-head matchup in that regard there. I would love to see Hex Mambo win. I think it would be one of the most insane storylines that an SCC team won. But I'm also kind of in the boat now where I don't know if I can call these guys an SCC team. Sure, on
it's hard.
paper, physically, this is a Smite Challenger Circuit European team. But there are 4 players on that team who are who were at one point top-level SPL players. Trix Tank,
So
Zeros.
are you putting
Johnny
them in
was in there.
finals? Are you choosing them to win Worlds?
I'm not putting them in finals.
Stop dodging the question, coward.
I'm not putting Mambo in finals. I think it would be great to see them there, and I could see the potential of it. I think this is Kings and Leviathans finals.
Yep.
I would personally love to see the Kings win it, mostly because I've been a Captain Twig fan since
Sure.
my Smite competitive watching birth. Ever since I've seen this player,
Birth.
I have loved watching this player.
So you're
and
thinking
I-
Kings
and
Leviathans with Kings winning it.
I'm hoping that Kings win. just because I want to
keep
see.
checking his watch.
No, I'm not checking my watch. I'm reading chat. I want to hear what chat has to think as well.
I want to see the Kings win because I've wanted to see Captain Twig get that ring for now 9 seasons running.
My man, biased.
A tragic second place finish.
But
all right.
with
It
how
could happen, bro. He's on such a good team, and they're gonna go. They could go to finals, and they could lose again, and I would cry.
No way we get the 4 count.
I would
Come on.
actually. I would feel so bad for the guy if I ended up casters cursing him right now by
Knock
putting
on
him in
wood.
finals with predicting him there. But I do think that the Leviathans are just a slightly better squad out there. When this team is playing at full force, I think they have a very slight edge over the Camelot Kings. I know I predicted that the second semi was the only best of 5. I think that this is the closest 4-game set that we see the entirety way. I'm putting a 3-1 Leviathans here, but this is a very close game in the finals.
Final.
Yep.
And then we get
clear.
I
I hope
think-
this is all wrong.
And then, and then we get think about it, we get the 4-time Zap Man.
Yeah, right.
He's gonna have a ring for almost
I
for
think
every
I'm
finger
favoring-
on one hand.
That'd be nuts.
He's gonna,
So
have,
heavy.
he's gonna have the brass knuckle of Smite rings.
Chat. We're gonna wind down here in a minute. I want to see some chat predictions here. I want chat dark horses, and I'll shout some of you out as we go on here. I think if I were to fill out my finals bracket, I have very little confidence in this. I think it would be Kings Dragons in the finals. I think the Dragons might show up against the Levi's
so
in the
different.
semis. No, I mean just 5 minutes ago I predicted the Leviathans to beat the Dragons, but I think a 3-2 set.
Yeah, logically inconsistent.
Right, but I think that'd be a 3-2 set, and I would 4 times out of 10 have the Dragons moving on, and I think ultimately if you put a bracket in front of me, and I feel like there's got to be an upset somewhere, that would be where I put my upset. Dragons, Kings, and finals. Oh, the Dragons against Twig, their boy. They crush his dreams in the
man.
grand finals. That'd be nuts. I mean, the Kings are the #1 seed for a reason. I think they've got a good path to finals, and I think they end up winning finals. There's a lot of... I see some bolts in here. Hex Mambo, Dark Horse.
I told you they got loud fans.
They
Can
got
you
loud
imagine,
fans.
like,
the
a-
Bolts have some of the loudest
Imagine like a
Hex
Bolts
Mambo.
Warriors finals.
Dragons Mambo
sick.
would be
That'd be so
nuts.
sick.
I think Dragons Mambo might be the
Warriors
craziest.
Bolts finals would be insane.
That would
Dave,
be
I'll tell you
nuts.
this: if it were bookie odds, I also have Dragons,
Sure.
but it's not.
Okay, and I want this will be my final question to you guys before we wrap up, and we all can kind of deliver our final statements before we see everyone. Dark Horse to win Worlds, and they need to have an actual shot. You know, I don't want to hear.
Who are you going to disrespect right
I
now?
don't want to hear. No. I mean, I guess in theory,
I don't want to hear
has
the
a-
Ravens. Say it. Say it.
If you're going to say the Ravens, I want you to be able to back it up, is what I mean. Because the Ravens are going to have to go through Hex Mambo, a team that they did not beat all year long in the USCC, or the Olympus Bolts and the Camelot Kings. That's a very long road.
Yep.
I want, a realistic path. I don't think we can consider the Jade Dragons a dark horse. I think it's got to be a team outside of the top 3. If you consider the Dragons a dark
I don't
horse,
think there is a top 3. I think there's a top 2.
I think Dragons, if considered a dark horse, would be my dark horse. If not considered a dark horse, gotta be Hex Mambo, right?
Yep.
I think if Dragons are considered a dark horse, they would be my dark horse to win Worlds. If they are not, I think Hex Mambo are bro, I think Hex Mambo would be a dark horse to take the whole thing. Miff, go ahead.
Mine's Mambo. I'm sorry, EU. I'm sorry. It's Mambo.
Is it only because you're apologizing to EU, or do you legitimately do think Mambo?
I think that jungle is such an important role, which is why I've got the Camelot. I got the Camelot Kings holistically as a team, but that's why I have the Leviathans making the finals because of how sick Panatom is. But what Johnny accomplished this week on picks that shouldn't be doing it, the amount of times fights started to go bad, I blink and then Johnny's there and he repeats it multiple times. And I'm gonna speak to anime fans right now. If y'all seen Jujutsu Kaisen, he was black flashing, bro. It was going crazy. For the 3 fans in the chat that got that, shout, you're cool.
So you said, sorry, I zoned out when you started talking about anime. Jujutsu Kaisen, I've watched a couple episodes. Agro's mad at me. He's been begging me to watch it.
It's his all-time favorite anime.
So are you
Agro
saying-
has bad
I
taste.
think about like episode 8.
So are you saying Hex Mambo or your dark horse?
That's right.
Trelly, Hex Mambo, dark horse?
Yeah, Hex
Your mind
Mambo's
going somewhere
definitely
else?
the dark horse. It's just the Kings are, again, recency bias. We haven't seen them fry someone in such a long time, and I just watched Mambo cook up this tournament.
Right.
That's gonna be the hardest matchup Hex Mambo's ever had to face, but if they can do it, then yeah, they're the dark horse.
They might have the momentum there. J-Mac,
If they make it to finals, they win.
Picks?
Like it's just gonna
You
happen.
think Hex Mambo? At that
If
point,
Hex
they
Mambo
have
are
the
in
story.
finals,
Right.
they win.
Okay.
I think that's a fair statement to make there.
You think Hex Mambo your dark horse here, J-Mac?
I don't think that they are my dark horse. I think that they are probably the biggest dark horse just because it's a CC team that's coming up through. People don't put the respect on that one. I think it would make one of the most insane stories. But I think my dark horse of this one is the Oni Warriors. This is one of the most emotionally driven teams in the entire league. This is a team that needs so much momentum to get going.
Very
and if
fair.
they can find a win against the Jade Dragons of all team, who is one
very
of the
fair.
most
I agree.
W key style teams, if they can find a win there, I think you just keep going from that point there. I think if Oni Warriors can win quarterfinals, they have a very good shot of making it to finals and even potentially winning this one.
Yeah, Oni Warriors could be a dark horse.
Through the Levi's?
All right, I'm rattling
It's
off
tough,
I'm
but I
rattling
think
off
so.
like two simple yes or no questions to everyone. Kings versus the field. Yes or no?
Yes.
Kings versus the field.
No.
Kings versus the field.
No.
I'm saying no to Kings versus the field. Kings or Leviathans against the field. Still yes, because you took Kings. Kings or Leviathans against the field.
It's Worlds, man. There's got to be an
I
upset
know.
somewhere.
I know.
There's a way to make money on this. Split the bet. Like that's pretty good.
Right. Kings or Leviathans. You think one of those two teams against everyone else in the event wins it?
Yeah, probably.
Yes.
You sound so sad.
I mean, because I really want some craziness.
I
think we all do.
I think
in
I
this.
would. I think I would also take Kings or Leviathans against the field. Yep.
I think
Let
I think our
me cook up a
craziest.
crazy one before we close out
Okay,
our
here
show
we go.
here.
Let them cook.
Dragons, Hex Mambo, and Onis against the field.
No.
Dragons, Hex Mambo, Oni Warriors against the field. You think one of those three teams could win it against everyone else in the tournament?
I mean, here's the thing.
Do you think any of those three have a
I
chance at
get what
winning?
you're saying. The Jade Dragons, to me, have looked like the best team in the world at times, but we
So
haven't
you
seen
can
that
say yes.
recently. So if they show up like old dragons,
Yo, you stressing out, bro.
I'm
You
gonna
bugging.
be like, oh my god,
He's
it's the old
losing his
dragons.
mind.
I've seen those boys, but we haven't seen those old dragons.
Because
so,
like if I asked you Dragons against the field, you would say no.
I mean,
Would you say you said no to Kings against
said
the
no
field?
to Kings.
here's the thing.
Would you say yes to Dragons against
Let
the field?
them cook.
You're asking me to just
Who let 'em
pick
cook?
one team and say yes. I think every single team at some
Right.
point in this season has looked like
but
the
then
best.
I'm increasing the odds.
Right.
All of
Dragons plus Mambo. Would you
All of
take
them?
one of those two teams to win against the other six?
Scarabs?
They have the possibility, yeah.
But I'm saying, would you bet on that happening? Would you put money down on one of those two teams over the other six winning?
Yeah, I want to make some money. I would.
So you think they might have the chance?
They have a
J-Mac,
chance, for sure.
I don't know. I'm making up random combinations. Oni Warriors, Dragons, Hex Mambo versus the field. Would you take that?
No, I think that is
don't think I
way
would.
too matchup dependent for those three. Whereas you take the Levi's and
Dragons
the Kings
carries
against
that bet.
just about
Yeah.
any
It's
single
all,
one.
It's all on Dragons, right?
It's a yes from them, but I think of those three, Dragons the most likely. But I couldn't take them as 100% of
the
glass.
field against the Kings. Just kidding. All right,
seven
fellas,
against them.
we've done a lot
No.
of breaking down here. The Smite World Championship is going to kick off on Friday. I believe, production, yell at me if I'm wrong here. I believe it's 10 a.m. Central Time, Texas time, right?
Yeah.
And then 11 a.m. Eastern Time is when that'll start off. It's Camelot Kings, Highland Ravens, Bolts versus Hex Mambo, Dragons Warriors, Leviathans Titans. That'll be your quarterfinal matchups on Friday. My eyes are bad. I'm going to assume that tells me that quarterfinals kicking off at 11 a.m. Oh, here we go. behind
Opening
me.
ceremony.
11 a.m. Eastern, no, Central Time. 12 p.m. Eastern Time will be the start of the quarterfinals.
That's
but
noon.
That's so right. Noon Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central Time is quarterfinal one. However, I promise you, we've got a lot of really cool stuff. You do not want to miss the opening ceremonies. We've got some great videos, great content. That'll be introducing the teams, all of those sorts of things. That's at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday. And then, of course, before that, if you just can't contain your excitement, we'll have tailgate streams, those sorts of things. We'll be able to watch people walk in and have a whole lot of fun. And, of course, we move on to semifinals on Saturday. And then Sunday, the Smite World Championship Grand Finals, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central Time. This will all get tweeted out on SMITEPro, those sorts of things. Also, I'm sleeping at the studio on Tuesday, so I can make my shuttle to the airport. So Tuesday night, I don't know, probably at like 9 o'clock Eastern
You
or
want to
something
be
like
Amaranth
that.
so bad.
I mean, she makes a lot of money, so I'd be cool with that.
Yeah, same.
So on. Oh, do we have my bed set up?
That's what we're
Okay.
being told.
That's where I'm sleeping. Oh my God! All right.
Wait, no, that's just not inflated. That's not a
No,
blanket.
that's
I was
not a
gonna
blanket.
say,
I
it's just
haven't-
gonna be
I haven't-
done.
I have an air mattress,
Oh,
but I will be sleeping underneath that Twitch Prime blanket. So I'm leaving. The shuttle leaves for the airport to Worlds at 5 a.m. on Wednesday morning.
Mine leaves at 4.
Yeah, you're in a terrible spot. I'm much
Yours
more
are like
of a baby.
9.
I'm out of here at
Myth.
9. Let's go.
I'm leaving. There's no way I'm leaving my house at like 4 in the morning. I might as well just stay awake at that point. And so I jokingly asked
Wait, what's your
Hindu-
address?
I jokingly asked Hindu, can I just sleep at the studio and wake up here? And he was like, yeah. And then it kind of became this. So we will have, the God reveal streams when we just have like a stream up and they do little teasers and stuff. I'm just going to be sleeping on stream. So if you guys want to watch
He's gonna
these-
forget he's on stream for sure.
What
Make
size
sure
air
you're
ma-
tuned
wait,
in
what size
the
air
whole
mattress do
time.
It's a queen size air
Okay.
mattress, so I'll be okay. That'll be Tuesday evening, probably, I don't know, around
Didn't even know they made them that
9,
big.
something
Yeah,
like
they
that.
make king-size air
I'm gonna sit in
mattresses.
there. I'm gonna read. I might hang out and talk in Twitch chat or something. Who
We
knows?
might come mess with them.
Are we gonna get you a mic?
A lot of this we're figuring out on the fly. But if you want to hang out, because I might toss and turn. I'm so excited for Worlds.
If you prime
So,
sub to the
so
channel,
that'll
we'll
be,
flicker
that'll
the
be
lights.
Tuesday evening, probably around 9 or so Eastern time. I'm going to tuck in for sure around 10:30 Eastern time, and we'll figure out microphone, or if I'm just talking to you guys in chat, I'm definitely going to read a bit because it makes me tired. That'll happen Tuesday night.
If you're on stream, do you technically get to clock those hours?
I don't know. Again, haven't figured
All
that
right,
out yet.
I'll be
I'm
in
gonna
if that's the
sleeping
case.
anyway.
Yeah, maybe
Mifflin,
we'll have a sleepover.
Let's have a little slumber party.
what's happening here? Is that Jordan?
That's Jordan. He's taking a nap on the prime.
So that's how it'll look, and that's pretty good. You'll be able to see me, which terrifies me. Taking a nice nap on the Prime Gaming pillow. My
It
God.
looks unbearably uncomfortable.
Again, without the air mattress, though, my big body will have an air mattress.
His
to-
hips
to
are
sleep on.
screaming right now.
I have terrible hips
He's in
too, so
pain.
this is really worrisome for me. So that'll be Tuesday night. I'll be sleeping here on stream. If you guys want to have a pre-Worlds sleepover, can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth. It kind of freaks me out. Final thoughts here, guys. SMITE World Championship around the corner. I know there's still a bunch of people watching on Twitch. Any final sort of shout outs? Come approach me, talk to me type things you guys want to say. I know everyone has different thresholds for those sorts of things.
So there are a lot of misconceptions in the SMITE community that have been going on for decades, and I need to clear them up. All of you guys think Barracuda's a really nice guy. He carries a shiv in his pocket. Make sure you watch out
You
for
can't
him.
say that.
And
That's
here's
not
the
true.
other thing.
That's
There's
not
gonna
true.
be a
There's
metal
Dave
character.
censors me at every turn, and everything I want to say isn't allowed to be out there. There are powers
You
that be.
just-
Watch out.
We have security at the event. It's all good. Barracuda is not that type of
He's
person.
incredibly dangerous.
So those are Mifflin's final thoughts to you guys before Worlds. The next time you see him, he's going to be on stage at the SMITE World Championships. Trelly, you have any sort of final shout-outs before we close out here?
Hope to see you guys there. It's going to be a fun time. Do not approach Mifflin.
Ooh, that's good. And you've already lost your chance to talk. J-Mac, final thoughts.
No, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's not my first, Worlds that I get to work at. I've done some of the stuff for the collegiate, but now actually getting to do like SPL live on stage is going to be a ton of fun for me. I know for some it's first SPL Worlds as well. You were doing Paladins at one point. You weren't on the team quite just yet
called
at
you a
that
rookie.
point. And
This is
you
my
obviously
first
just
year.
now joining in and doing stuff. So this is going to be amazing, I think, for all of us. Goremizer, I know he's not here, but I know he is
we're all
extremely
amped.
excited
hold on.
to be on
I'll
this
get
one.
Gore as well, Dave
Oh,
goes.
okay, so we'll get Gore there. So if you see me
gonna
there,
text you a whole thing.
like if you see me,
Yeah.
stop by. If you want to high five, a picture, a hug, whatever it may be, just ask me first, and I'm more than receptive of at least getting to meet the fans out there. I don't know what autograph situations. If you've got a pen and a T-shirt, bring a
We'll
pen
sign
because
stuff,
I'm not
yeah.
carrying a pen with me. I'm just gonna say it
It's
now.
going to blow up in your
Carry
shirt or
big
whatever you
bills.
If you want a Mifflin autograph, you'll have to spend some money. Look, Worlds is truly the best time of year, and we've been limited on the people that we can have there and the fans that we can have for the last couple of years, and we finally all get to. Jordan's
the
still
mic?
there. That poor guy.
He has a mic and no
He's
one
got a
can hear him.
Wait, so we will have a microphone for me on my sleepover on Tuesday, and I was being super sentimental. We finally get to have the fans out there and get everyone together. It's such a close knit community. And if you see any of us walking around, any of the players walking around, do not hesitate to stop us and say hello. You'll be able to tell if we're like working, if we're doing something. We're head down and we're trying to find our place. So please stop us, say hello. It's really the best part of the job. It reminds us. Oh, it's bedtime. Can we all hear that? I hope we can.
I heard.
I got Gore.
And you know, I think for us casters and the players, it's a reminder that there's folks on the other side watching and enjoying.
You can't hear us at all.
No, you
definitely
cannot.
cannot.
I have Gore's final thoughts.
And
Okay.
Gore's final thoughts here.
Excited for Worlds. We'll wear suits and talk a lot. 10 out of 10. Please say hi to me.
There you go.
There
Please
it
say
is.
hi to everyone.
From Gore Miser. Oh, as in fans say hi, not you, Trelly, though you can also say hi.
Gotcha. You'll say hi to Gore as well. Look, cannot wait to see you guys. It's going to be an incredible event. It'll all be kicking off on Friday. Remember, I have a sleep stream here in studio on Tuesday, in which I apparently will have a mic, and I'm just going to. Nobody else is going to be here. It is literally me. Well, unless people
I'm
show
close
up
enough
at 3 in the
by I
morning.
could just come.
Are you
mess
not
with
worried, Dave, about going to Texas?
What do you mean?
Well, you have 3 outstanding warrants. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to leave the
Yeah,
state.
they might lock me down there. No, guys, it's gonna be a great event for those of you
Texas,
who
they
can make
welcome
it.
them.
Please come say hello. It's the best part of our job. The crowd, I'm sure, is gonna have some great energy. For those who can't make it, enjoy the show because this could be building up to one of the coolest Smite World Championships that we've had. A lot of close teams. And a whole lot of fun yet to be had. So tune in Tuesday if you want to watch me sleep in studio, but tune in on Friday. I already forgot the time. What did I say? Noon Eastern time for the start of the quarterfinals.
11 Central.
Goodbye.
But an hour or two before that on Friday.
Wake up at 9.
9 a.m. or so. Tune in. We're going to be doing pre-shows, really cool intro stuff we've been working on, and a whole lot of fun. To be
You
had.
can't do it forever, Dave. Get us out of
Jordan's
here.
saying goodbye. I'll say goodbye. Smite World Championships coming up. We'll see you there.
Woo! Yeah!
Oh!
Smite!